How's it going, guys? My name is Tavarish, and today we're going to find out how much money I've spent on my Lamborghini Gallardo project over the last year. And we're going to find out if the cheapest Lamborghini in the country is still the cheapest Lamborghini in the country. Spoiler alert, probably not. So if you're new to the channel, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoy it. I couldn't have done it without you guys. This is the culmination of the project. This is the end where I let you guys know how much everything cost. I actually don't know. I did put all the numbers sort of in a spreadsheet, but I didn't put the total in, and we're gonna find out together if this cheap Lamborghini is still cheap. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, you can go and watch my playlist. Link for that will be in the description below or up here. I don't know how YouTube does that anymore. You can go check that out if you're lost on any of it, and you can watch my, at this point, dozens and dozens of videos. So let's begin. I bought my 2008 Lamborghini Gallardo Spider on the internet. That's the best place to buy used cars, but the best place to buy used cars on the internet is a site called Tempest.com, and they are also the sponsor of today's video. Now, the reason why I mentioned them, it's not just because they're sponsoring today's video, it's because I've actually used this site for years. So those of you that know my channel know that Tempest isn't just a place where I go and find cars to buy, it's a place where I go and do research on cars that I buy in the future. You see, if it's research, then you don't have a problem. But what the site does is it basically brings together listings from all the major used car sites, and it's super easy. Let's see if I can find the cheapest Lamborghini Gallardo in the country. So we just go to Lamborghini, we go to Gallardo, and we put it into any miles of 90210, 90210, and we hit search. And right away we have a ton of listings for Lamborghini Gallardos. Now, this one is 160 grand. I think that's a little bit out of our price range. I don't think I spent that much, but here's one for 99,000. Here's one for, that's that same 159 one. Here's one for 126, 167, 139, 129. We want the cheap one, so let's keep scrolling down here. Ooh, 88,026. That's actually a very specific number, but this is a 06 Gallardo Spider. It's white, just like mine, so we're gonna keep an eye on this one. This is $88,000. We're gonna see if mine is a little bit more expensive. Now, in addition, you can go up here and hit this, and you can compare with all of Craigslist, not just your local area. It really is very, very useful when you're trying to find the country's cheapest car. I mean, if you can't find the country's cheapest car with this, you're doing it wrong. So right around a year ago, I was on Tempest, and I was looking up Gallardo Spiders, as you're apt to do when you're doing research and not trying to buy a car at all. And I found a car that was for sale in California. Now, it had some damage, it had some fire damage, and it wasn't running. Technically, it was running, but it wasn't driving. The listing said that it had a issue with the clutch being on the floor, and it just wouldn't drive. In addition, it had a twin turbo system, and it was also a manual. Manual Gallardos are very, very rare, at least in this price range. They were asking $69,000. And me, being a shrewd negotiator, I offered them $55,000 and they declined. But then I upped my bid a little bit. I went to $56,000, $57,000, $58,000, and then they messaged me and said, hey, we have a bunch of offers for $62,000 and $63,000. If you can give us $64,000, the car is yours. And $64,000 might not sound like a lot for a Lamborghini Gallardo Spider with a twin turbo system and also a manual transmission. But for me, $64,000 is more money than I've ever spent on a car, ever. It was actually a big deal for me because I had an Aston Martin V8 Vantage, and that I had to sell to make money for this car. So I decided to just go for it. What could go wrong? I mean, at the very least, if I sold the car and I parted it out, I could get probably most of my money back. It's a good thing I didn't have to do that. But after I wired the money and had a few kind of sketchy videos of the car in rain on a forklift of all things, running and driving, I had a friend go out there and check the car out, and he gave it a clean bill of health. Well, as clean as it can be. The car did start, so that's the only thing I was concerned about. Then I had the car shipped over from California all the way to Florida, and it was mine. It was my Lamborghini, and I was super pumped about it. So let's go over all the money that I spent on this car since then, and then we'll see if I got a good deal or not. Now I have a little spreadsheet here. The car cost me $64,000. Again, more money than I've ever spent on anything. Shipping was $900. That was actually a deal and a half. I have to thank Bob from TAC Auto Transport. He did a really good job. It was covered shipping cross country. You can't beat that. Now the prices I have listed in the spreadsheet, they are kind of scattershot. They're not necessarily in the order that I did them in, and they are rounded to the nearest $50. So it's not going to be a very, very specific number just because there are a lot of receipts and I have to go through all of them. This is basically a ballpark. It's going to be a very accurate ballpark, but a ballpark nonetheless, just so you guys know how much I've spent on this entire project. So the first thing, oddly enough, that I did on the car was wheel powder coating. I had those sent out to the guy at Intercooler Racing that does all of their powder coating, and that was $600 to powder coat my wheels from the red, really loud red that the car came with to a more subtle, it was called Cosmetallic. It's a gunmetal, it had some flake in it. It looks really, really nice. Then I got tires. Now, Michelin is a product sponsor for my channel, but what we're going to do with this is that I'm going to give you the retail prices of everything, so in case you guys want to build a Lamborghini of your own and you have similar circumstances, you'll know how much this stuff costs. So the tires are Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's, and they are legitimately the best tires that you can get on any car ever. Those tires were $1,200. That's what the retail cost on those is. Then I had to dig into the turbo system. The turbo system on that car was not good. So I had to take it apart, basically do the entire thing over. The exhaust was facing the wrong direction. The intake was taking air in from a really hot place in the engine bay. I have no idea how that car even ran, but the turbo kit definitely needed redoing. So I got a new turbo. It was a Borg-Warner EFR 8374, and it's a really cool turbo. It spins up super fast. I bought it locally and it was $1,600. Yeah, it's a lot. After that, I had the turbo piping made completely custom. I essentially helped somebody else do it, and that is Tony, the welding Jedi. He is amazing, and he is a viewer, and now he's a friend, and he's just one of the best guys that I know. He was so dedicated in this project that he would work from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then after work, he would come and work at my essentially 2-car garage that we converted into a 1-car garage with a small welding station. And we worked on the turbo kit until midnight every night, and then he had to go to sleep for like 3 hours and then go to work. I have no idea how he did any of that, but he is an absolute MVP. So we got stainless steel pipes for the turbo kit. That's a stainless steel going from the downpipes into the turbo and also the exhaust. That was $500. We have welding supplies, which were $200. That means grinding discs, that means cut-off wheels, that means saw blades, that means other stuff, wire brushes, argon gas, all that stuff. And now we have welding services. Now, Tony didn't want to get paid, and I wanted to pay him. I wanted to give him something. He did spend so much time. So that was $700. Honestly, I don't think it was enough, and I definitely want to make it up to him. We can do a nice fancy dinner, and he definitely will get a ride in the car and drive it if he wants to. Then I had to redo the fuel lines and fittings. And this was a big deal because fuel leak on this car was originally the reason for the fire. The fuel lines were something that I had to make custom, and I had to make 100%. So all the fuel lines and fittings that were on there that were really badly on there and badly designed, they had to leave. So I basically threw all those out. The fittings I still saved, but I didn't reuse them because they were different type of connector. The fittings that I used, they were AN fittings all throughout, and I made sure that the correct diameters were used. I made sure that the correct washers were used, and I made sure that the lines were crimped correctly and there were no leaks. So that cost $500. Another $500 were spent on the oil fittings and lines. We did have to do the oil system for the turbos. We had to reroute some things. We had to basically throw away the oil system that was there. And the oil lines and all that stuff had to be redone. A lot of this cost is basically me ordering fittings, realizing that they don't work, spending 2 or 3 days trying to fit them up, realizing that I need something else, and ordering more. So I have a huge box of fittings fittings at my house that aren't really doing anything other than waiting for my next project. So that cost $500. Then we have the big one as far as fittings and lines are concerned, the intercooler system. So the intercooler system on this car, basically how it works is you have a tank of water. That water gets brought through a pump, and then it goes into a heat exchanger where it gets nice and cool. Then it goes back into the intercooler where it can cool the charged air, because charged air is hotter air. When you compress air, you make it hotter. And when you can cool off that air, that means that you get more boost, you get more timing, you get more power. So I had to redo all of that. It did have an intercooler, an air-to-water intercooler that I did keep, but I had to redo all the lines. I had to redo the tank. So the intercooler fittings and lines cost $1,200. Now the tank itself, I got it cheap, Amazon Prime. That was $100. The intercooler pump, that is that's a monster. It's called a Stewart EMP. It flows basically like a fire hose. I have never had a problem with it. It's a continuous use pump. It's really expensive. I paid $500 for it. But then I had to do the clutch, and the clutch was not working. This car sat for 2 or 3 years, and the clutch just basically welded itself to the flywheel. So I took off the transmission, I just cleaned up all the surfaces, and I popped the clutch out, and then it started working. Now I did have to clean everything back and get new bolts, and the new bolts were $50. Then I got your favorite, some DEI gold tape. And the gold tape was used as a heat reflection for the stock heat shields, and also to make the intercooler a little bit better, and just make everything a little bit more efficient. That was $300 I spent on some tape and some other DEI products. I also did 2 oil changes. Now the first oil change was to get all the old oil out of the car, and then the second one was after I did the dyno. 2 oil changes with very expensive oil. I have 20 W60 Motul 300V Le Mans racing oil, all together with 2 oil changes and the oil and everything else, the little O-rings that you need. It was $600. So that's a tough pill to swallow when all you're doing is changing oil, especially when the oil is almost brand new. Manual transmission fluid, I also changed that. I have Redline MT90, I believe. So that was $150. Now the tuning was one of the things that I had the most trouble with, because as you know, Lamborghinis are very, very common, and anybody and their mother can tune one of these things. There are like 5 people in this country that can accurately tune a Lamborghini with a twin turbo setup, and 0 of them want to do work on cars that they haven't built. Now Cybex did offer some help in that they referred me to a tuner in Dubai that helped me out with this entire system. He set up everything to get me kind of like a base tune, and they did give me a base tune, so they were a big help on that. But I still needed to do all the groundwork myself and find a person that knows tuning. Now I know a lot more about tuning than I did, but I needed to recruit somebody that really knew their stuff, because the last thing I want is for me to spend all this money on a car and the engine blows up. So I took it to Jeremy from Faster Proms, and he's the guy that does all the cars for Cletus McFarland. He was local to me, about an hour and a half, and I took the car over there and we tried to get the car tuned. Now, here's the thing. When you try to do a lot of stuff in one day, it doesn't really end up working well, because tuning takes a while. Tuning takes a long time. We had basically a whole day, and to do a idle and drivability and power runs and all that stuff on an unknown system, on an unknown engine. We learned a lot through that process, but we did get some cool fireballs. Fireballs are always good, and I hung out with Cletus McFarland, and he's just the best guy ever. Also, Jeremy is the best guy ever, so there's no knocking on him at all. I spent about $1,000 on that day. And after that, I got another offer from a guy in Tampa, close to where Cletus is, and he says, hey, I have a Mustang dyno, and you're free to use it anytime you want, and I'm also a tuner. I know how to tune things. I've tuned cars in Dubai, I've tuned lots of race cars, so I know what I'm doing. His name is Erik Cruz, and now you guys know him on the channel. He was actually in my last Lamborghini video, tuning the drivability and idle and all of that. Now, Erik did not want any money for tuning. I came to him and I spent 5 days at his shop, and that's how long it takes. And all we did was we tuned the mid-range and also the top end, so we did get a lot of power. And on his dyno, the car made 620 to the wheels, and on that dyno, it read very, very low. We're talking McLarens that read 400 something to the wheels. So on any other dyno, it would probably read around 800 to the wheels, which would mean 900 something to the crank. And the car definitely feels like an 700 to 900 horsepower car. It is absolutely insane. Erik didn't want anything for the tuning that he did, even though he spent a lot of time. So I gave him my MR2 Turbo project. And I also gave him all the parts that I had. That was a $2,500 value. But I'm not gonna count that because now we're friends, and sometimes friends give each other cars that need a lot of work. But recently, Erik came by and he tuned the idle and drivability, and he also gave the car a two-step and also a little bit of pops and crackles when you press the throttle down, and I gave him $300 for that. Again, he didn't ask for anything, and I think I'm probably undervaluing this, but that's how much it cost. Now, I did have to do a lot of wiring in this car, and the miscellaneous wiring supplies, meaning crimps, connectors, and the sensors for the convertible top, which still does not work. I have tried everything. I've gone over every single pinout, and it's really been difficult. But the top can work manually. I can manually put it down, but other than that, it just doesn't work on its own. I think it might be a hydraulic issue where one of the hydraulic rams is leaking, so I'm just gonna have that rebuilt. The miscellaneous wiring supplies, $350. Miscellaneous paint and refinishing supplies, $200. Miscellaneous brackets and metal standoffs. This is so I can mount things like the remote reservoirs. That was $100, so it wasn't really that expensive. Also, the seat belt on the passenger side needed some work. That was $100 on eBay. That was actually not too bad. Then we have the rear convertible tray. Oddly enough, my car didn't come with a convertible tray. It's the big plastic tray that goes above the engine, which the convertible top slots into. That was $800. Then we have the Android head unit, and you guys love the install of this. It did need some modification, but that was $400. Now, the paint and body work is something that I was really looking forward to, and also kind of dreading because you can screw up a paint job real quick. But I ended up taking it to the experts at Eurocar Body Shop in Winter Park, Florida, and they did an awesome job. Now, we did a promotional deal. They did give me a pretty good discount, but what they would charge anybody else is $3,500 or thereabouts. $3,500 for paint and bodywork. It did take about a month or so, but it came out looking very good. And even though they did tell me, oh, there are a few things that we'd like to change, so bring the car in when you can, they were really upfront about it, and I wouldn't hesitate to bring my cars there, and I will be doing that in the future. But the next part is diagnosing the car. Now, the car did have some issues electrically. I needed to reset the airbag light. I needed to see what the top was doing, what the sensors were doing, and all that stuff. So in order to do that, I had to get a Windows XP laptop because apparently Lamborghinis can't talk to anything like this. They can't talk to anything new. So I bought a Windows XP laptop on Craigslist for $50. Had a bunch of weird software on it, but I'm not going to the internet, so who cares? Then I bought the Lara software, and the Lara software is a diagnostic, the dealer level diagnostic software for the early Lamborghinis, and that was $1,600. Then you have to find a way to get from the computer to the car, and what you need is called a multiplexer. And I bought a cheap Chinese knockoff multiplexer for $300, which actually wasn't that cheap to begin with, and it did not work. The drivers didn't work, and it didn't work with any computer, and it certainly didn't work with the car. Then I got something else that was useless and expensive, the factory service manual. So the factory service manual on the Lamborghini is it's just garbage. It's absolute garbage. The pictures are horrible. There's major spelling incorrections. There's lots of wrong information, and that was $500. Then I got the factory wiring manual, which was worse than useless because I had an electrical engineer look at this, and he's like, "Dude, you can't use this. This will confuse you more." So the wire colors were all wrong. It had some weird numbers and weird letters that didn't make any sense. It didn't correspond to anything, so that was useless. That was another $500. So $1,000 on these manuals, and they didn't do anything. And to get the correct multiplexer, I had a viewer just give it to me. It was pure happenstance, pure chance, but I'm so grateful that one of my viewers gave me the correct multiplexer with the correct serial port and all that stuff, and it worked. And I could finally see what the car was seeing and have the Lara software work, but it took a long time. It took like 3 or 4 months for me to get that. And that was free, but it was like a $650 value if I were to actually buy that, which I did try to. They don't make it anymore. And then we come to the AC system. So since the engine had been out multiple times, the AC just didn't have a charge. So refrigerant, O-rings, and a dryer for the AC system were $100. And then I got K&N air filters with the socks that protect it from moisture and water. That was $150. Then we have the transmission oil line, which did spring a leak for some reason. I think I over tightened it, and I had to fix it with some fittings and a new line, and I fixed that for $50. And then I got a top ECU, and the top ECU is basically just a computer for the top system. I thought that was faulty. It was not faulty, so that was, again, a waste of money. Also, I'm going to add in right now $500 for hydraulic lines that I got from Top Hydraulics out in Oregon. My hydraulic lines, 1 were leaking and 2 were burnt. So I replaced a few hydraulic lines, and that was $500. So to finish the build off, in my mind, I wanted to make the car look as good as possible, and I had to update that rear end, which meant that I had to get a new bumper, new taillights, and new rear panel. Now the bumper was a fiberglass recreation that I got from Poland, and that cost $1,600. The taillights and brackets, that was very expensive, and I work with a company called eurospares.co.uk, and they sent me over some brand new taillights from an LP570, which really smartened up the look, and they also included the brackets. But even without that, the retail price is $3,300. In addition, the facelifted rear panel is different than the one I got on the car, so I had to get that. It's a fiberglass recreation. I got it on eBay. It was $700. And then I had to do the scavenge pump, which was a pump that takes the spent oil from the turbos, puts it into a T, sucks it up, and then puts it back into the engine via either the oil tank or the valve cover. And that entire setup with the oil fittings and lines and pump and all that stuff and the wiring was $800. And then to top it off, I have a Superleggera wing that I got from a viewer, which needed some work, but usually these wings go for anywhere between $1,300 and $1,800 because they're carbon fiber and they look really good. They're like a finishing piece on the car, but I got mine that needed a little bit of work for $600. So now comes a moment of truth. So I legitimately have not done the sum on this, but let's just check this. So the grand total of the entirety of my spend on this car, $91,450. Now, that might sound like a lot to you, because it is, but keep in mind, we're talking about a twin turbocharged, freshly painted. The wheels are new, the tires are new. The wheels aren't new, but you know what I mean. Everything is refurbished. The car has been rebuilt from the ground up. It's had a turbo kit that is custom installed, a custom tune on it that runs very well, and it's a manual gated transmission, which is just going up in price. So I think for $91,000, you can't find anything like that on the market. So that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I learned a lot today. I learned that I didn't spend $100,000 on my Lamborghini project, and that's always a good thing. But that's going to be phase 1. That's the end of phase 1. Phase 2 is beginning for that car. And what that means is we're going to be chasing more power, we're going to be doing race events, we're going to be doing more driving, and we're going to make the car look a little bit different because phase 1 looks pretty good. Phase 2 is going to look even better. But the eagle-eyed amongst you will know that I'm not in my house. And the people on my Instagram feed, by the way, follow if you're not followed, they'll know that I am not in Florida. I'm actually in California, and I'm picking up my brand new car. Well, not brand new. I never buy anything brand new, but you guys are gonna see it coming soon on my channel. So make sure to hit that subscribe button, make sure to hit that bell, and you guys, I think you guys will like it. If you like this Gallardo project, you guys are gonna love this one. So until next time, this is me reminding you guys that on cars like my Lamborghini Gallardo with a sketchy past, but we turned it into just an awesome speed machine. You guys need to wrench every day.